I have not read about that. It might be in the literature, but I haven't read it.
So I heard that not many bugs do like tobacco leaves.
They don't.
I heard that they used to make the mattresses of that.
They might have, but I haven't read that. Let's go to the field and I'll answer that question. Different purposes, but I haven't heard about tobacco. But it does, bed bugs were a big problem, and if tobacco leaves kept bed bugs away, then they do it. I did hear about sometimes the bed posts would be put in cans of kerosene to keep the bed bugs away. But most of us were sleeping on straw.
How many hills were in that field?
About 700. So, Wayne and I, in the spring, transplanted each one of these into these hills, and then we weeded it. I have gone around and I've topped most of these plants. The plants that we grow today are, there's 5 different varieties. We've got Trinidad, we've got yellow stemmed, we've got Baronos, which we believe is a variety that the Randolphs used to grow. And then we have sweet scented, and then the kind that's blossoming over there is yellow, sweet yellow. It's got pink blossoms on it. And then this is all Venezuelan. So from this row over, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is all the same plant, same kind of plant. But each one of these, if you look closely, is a different plant, because we are experimenting. And they experimented in the 18th century. Most of them let these plants, let a couple of them in their acres go to seed, and they collected the seed and they saved that for next year. But they also were purchasing seed, and they were looking for different varieties. Because it's really amazing if you read the literature, seemingly arbitrarily on the docks of London, people would get these reputations for certain areas of certain kinds of tobacco. And sometimes it made sense, but here we're reading it 200 years later, and everybody wanted like St. Martin's sort. And we don't know why. I believe that, personally, the number one, the single reason tobacco is good quality is the soil. And if you have good virgin soil, good fertile soil, then you're going to produce a quality leaf. And when it arrives on the dock in London, if people know that, and last year you had a good crop, and there's a reputation, and sometimes they would pay exorbitant prices for one particular variety of tobacco. But topping it is what you do, 6 to 8 perfect leaves. That's what we're looking for, perfect leaves. And then you harvest it. You take a knife and you take it and you split it right down the middle, and then you chop off the bottom, you split the stalk, and then you put it on a stick, and you put about 5 plants per stick, and then you hang it up. They would cut it and just lay it down in the fields for a day or two, and then they would move it onto a platform or a rack that's outside here. Sometimes they put it on a fence post. Sometimes they put these forked sticks up on a fence and hang it from that. You read all these different kinds because they were improvisers and they just wanted to get it off the ground. But after it's dried out in the sun for a little while, then they move it in, because it has to be thoroughly dried before you put it in these hogsheads. So about 4 weeks, 4 to 5 weeks after it's cut and cured, then it's packed. Landon Carter tells about curing and how if you have a good curer, or if you have a person who knows about curing, it could increase the price that you get for tobacco by up to 20%, which is significant. So if you had a slave that's been doing it for 20 years, or if you had an overseer or someone that was thoroughly knowledgeable about tobacco, even after it grew, the care that you gave a plant in curing it could greatly increase your amount of money that you made that year. So, so now the plant is dried, it's curing in the barns. Sometimes here in Virginia we have this thing called humidity. Are you familiar with it?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Well, it's not that bad. It's really, it's pleasant today. But the humidity can prevent the plant from thoroughly drying out. So sometimes they were put in barns and fires were lit in these barns to dry them out. That's still practiced today in Kentucky. You see these vents being closed and it looks like the barns are on fire, but smoke's coming out of it. They do it now for different reasons. It's still for drying, but they do it for conditioning and other reasons. But they did it here just to dry it. As a colony of England, our job was to provide them with tax money and also with raw material. And the raw material for Virginia for 200 years was this plant, this tobacco. And so we weren't supposed to do a lot of processing. They did the processing, and then they resold it after they take their percentage. So we would send them these leaves, and after they're cured, these leaves are removed from the stalk, and they're put in these piles. It's about 20 of them, and then you wrap them together, and that's called a hand of tobacco. You take your hand of tobacco and you would pack it in a hogshead, and they would lay them on their sides like this, with their butt ends near the edge. So they were put in like this, and then 90-degree angles, they're put like this, and that's one layer. And you put them in there, and you fill that barrel up to the top. And it takes about 2 or 3 acres to fill up a barrel. So you fill it up, you prise it. That device is called a prise, and that squeezes it down. So after it's filled, you put that on top, you come back in a couple days, and instead of having a barrel full of tobacco, it's 2/3 full. So you can put more in. So you put more in, and then you squeeze it. And what you wanted to do is to get between 950 and 1,100 pounds of tobacco in a hogshead. Because it was, the more you could get in, the more money you would get. So after it is harvested and cured and prized, then it's sent to the docks of Virginia, and then it's sent on its voyage. Usually on the voyage you also send with it a list of things you want. The economic situation of the day prohibited from pounds sterling, which was the currency in England, from returning to the colony. So they didn't want to pay us in cash. So we call it a cash crop, but it's a misnomer. It's a credit crop. So they would give us credit. They would say, okay, this year your barrel brought 8 pounds. I'm going to subtract my commission. I'm going to subtract the taxes and the insurance, and whatever's left over is what you get for credit. Then they go to your list and they say, okay, you want glass for your house, you want bolts of linen, you want some tea, and you want sugar, and you want some rum. Rum's a good idea. Rum or beer or wine.
Like that.
Yeah. Well, that's important. And so you, maybe after 6 months of sending this stuff away, you might get something back after 6 months. Many of these fell victim to wind or wave. I'm going to ask the little people, what do you, not little, the kids, what do you think falling victim to wind or wave meant? It's an easy question.
It like got broken because of the water and stuff. Because
Right.
of the weather.
Broken because of the water, or the ship sunk. Ships sink, storms happen. And if you spend 1,000 hours out in your field laboriously making these hills, doing all this work with tobacco, and then you breathe a huge sigh of relief, well, it was a little too early, because that ship could go down, and then you'd be out of luck. They did have insurance, but it cost money for insurance. So there wasn't a law that said you had to take out insurance like there is today. So then there's this Tobacco Inspection Act of 1730 that had inspectors coming through your field making sure that you didn't have suckers. I haven't really talked about suckers, but after you top a plant, much like the tomato, in the crotch of all these leaves is a tiny little leaf that's going to get about this big in a couple days, and you have to remove those suckers. And by law, you couldn't sell suckers because it's an inferior leaf. And really, the last thing any of us wanted to do was to send inferior tobacco to England. But some farmers wanted to, or they thought they could get away with it. So the Tobacco Inspection Act of 1730 saw to it that that did not happen. That there was no second crop, even though our season is long and you can have a second crop. You can't have a second crop, you can't have inferior leaf, and the inspectors are now given this responsibility to make sure that the leaves leaving Virginia were only at the finest quality. And they could, for seemingly no reasons, you read it and you don't understand why, but they remove your crop, say it's no good, and they destroy it. They say they destroy it. I bet they kept it. but they said they destroy it. So a lot of farmers, you know, you would think, why don't you smoke your own tobacco? Well, you wouldn't, because you would get money for it, and you would want to pay for other things like clothing and nice things like brick in your chimney. Instead of having a wattle and daub chimney, which is wood and mud, you want to be able to buy brick for your wife who's cooking your meals for you. And so that's more important than smoking your tobacco.
Sure.
So does anyone